Shut up and sit down.
By all means, go for it. Have fun.
Yeah.
Just leave me alone.
People are coming together more and more and more and more as the government has been failing us more and more.
I'm against being shitty to people.
You can't research your way into understanding somebody.
One way or another, I'd rather have the fight now.
Oh, hey, welcome back to Fight for Liberty. We have got a great show for you guys tonight with a very good friend, elected constable and host of Daniel 3 Biblical Anarchy podcast, Jacob Daniel Winograd. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. If you haven't heard me talk about it yet, we have added a new sponsor to the show, Blood of Tyrants Wine. The tree of liberty must be watered from time to time with the blood of tyrants. So must your mouth be watered from time to time with Blood of Tyrants Wine. It's a rich Merlot with flavors of black cherries, plums, and figs with a soft and smooth finish. You can go to bloodoftyrants.wine, this thing down here, and you yourself can discover the taste of freedom. Use promo code F4L to get $5 off your first order and help me, help the show, help Free Speech Media, and a bunch of other libertarians that you know and love who are behind this wonderful thing. Now back to the old school ones, Nug of Knowledge. You guys already know about this. I'm smoking it right now. You guys should be too. If you like cannabis products at all, especially if you live in a state where they are not legal yet, go to nugofknowledge.com. You can get your Delta 8, CBD, all of those other things that are currently legal in most of the states. Even if it's not legal in your state, you can still buy it, but that's on you. Go over to nugofknowledge.com, same promo code F4L, and you can get, I think it's free shipping currently is what that's for. I need to double check that. But without further ado, we've got a great guy returning to the podcast, Mr. Jacob Daniel Winograd. Why did I just skip your first name?
Dude, that's the meme, like of me. I mean, people call me Daniel or Jacob or Christian Liberty dude, or even I was at where was I? I was at church, I think 2 Sundays ago, and someone who I've known for like 15 years came up to me and called me Daniel. And I was just like, whatever. At this point, I just answer to just about any of those things. So yeah, it's great to be back, man. I have to say, you had such a smooth intro, including like the vape smoke coming out like right as it cued to you. Like it looked planned, even if it wasn't. So kudos to that.
We're gonna pretend that was completely organic, and just go with that. Man, it has been a while. Welcome back to the show. Let's start off first with you're now an elected official, so congratulations on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird because it's like I don't really do anything, because it turns out like trying to be a libertarian constable is like trying to be a Christian Satanist, I guess. I don't know. Like, it you know what I mean? It's just like you look at the position, you're like, cool, what can I do? It's like, well, I can basically just sit here and nullify the whole position by doing nothing. So that's what I'm doing. Taking up the position so some statist doesn't take it up and decide to serve people with a bunch of BS warrants and assisting the sheriff's department and law enforcement with BS tasks that I wouldn't agree with. So, but yeah, I haven't shot any dogs yet. You know what I mean? Still waiting for my first opportunity. But I've never been a dog person, and so it's a natural fit. What can I say?
Well, I hope that you get that opportunity quickly. What would be the things that you would do as constable if you were proper statist?
Sure. I mean, it depends on, I think every state's a little different, but in general, the general sense of the constable is to assist the sheriff and law enforcement with like basically the menial tasks that they don't want to do. Serving warrants tends to be the biggest one, providing security at like polling places, or you can even, I think, provide security in like courts and stuff like that. And I think act in some capacity or assistant role in emergency situations. So there's a long list of things of that nature. Now, unfortunately, a lot of it comes with like if you want to do 90% of the job description, you have to go get like thousands of dollars of training, which I was like, I'm not doing that to be qualified to do the things I'm not going to do anyway. So the only thing I'm really required to do, because like people will be like, weren't you gonna like get in trouble? And it's like, well, really the only thing that you have to do, which I mean, and by half, I mean like you're supposed, like even that, like they're not going to compel me by force. The worst they could do is, call me derelict and remove me from my position. But I have to show up on polling day and provide security, and that's literally it.
Nice. And I mean, that's something that I feel like every libertarian can still kind of get behind. Is like the process of election. I mean, even if we don't like democracy, it's like something that we're doing. And I feel like providing security is what you're actually like. The only thing that we actually feel like cops should be doing is like protecting people. So I don't know. I feel like that's a less shitty thing.
I protect the sacred process of the democratic foundation of our society. It is it's an honored role that I cherish, and ensuring that when the people show up with the thousands of mail-in ballots from dead people, that they are not overtaken by the mob. No.
Oh my God. Especially in a state like PA, you guys are one of the ones that gets
it was
at
pretty
a little bit more.
Yeah, no, and as much as I tend to actually, like, I was obviously joking, although people will run with that anyway. I don't generally think that the thing that happened in 2020 that people say was stolen was stolen. But there was definitely some things, that weren't kosher, and definitely the way that people, the government in Pennsylvania responded was pretty shitty and violating our constitution. So it's not great, although it's hard to get animated about something that I had no faith in to begin with. So it's sort of like if someone revealed to me some kind of like, oh look, Joseph Campbell didn't encounter these tablets that said Jesus lived in North America 500 years ago. I'd be like, oh no, my whole worldview has completely changed.
Yeah, I did kind of enjoy that like couple of months where everyone was freaking out about like election integrity and like the system's rigged, and it's like,
yes,
no shit.
That was a tough thing, because like if you said yes, like if you agreed with people to any extent that it was rigged, people would call you a Trump supporter. And it'd be like, well, no, like it's just people were motivated by their loyalty to Trump to maybe start noticing some of the BS that's just always been part of every election. So it's not like earth shattering. I don't think the degree to which it happens makes a big difference. I'm sure both sides in their particular areas of influence do what they can to leverage the election in the direction they want. So, I mean, it might seem like a cop-out to say I think that all kind of balances out, but I don't know. I kind of think it does. And yeah, I mean, if people want transparency from the democratic process, then I mean, I don't know. Like you can, I guess if you get involved locally, you can try to do it yourself. Like, so you can be an inspector of elections and you can try to do all that. But I don't know. My faith in democracy is so little that like I tend to think that and it's like even like the mail-in ballots, like I don't even like who's doing the counting, and how do I know that the counting is even like not messed with after the fact? I mean,
Right.
who knows? You know what I mean? And even beyond that, like the way that the media serves to like completely undermine the truth and to completely push their propaganda out on the populace. I mean, the people already, when they're going to the voting booths, are operating sort of based on a bag of bad goods, I guess. So
Mhm.
it's, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. The whole thing's just so rotten to the core. And I don't know. Like I know some people, like there's some libertarians who I respect, who like Justin Amash, who still try to like pay some kind of respect to the democratic process and the republic and the Constitution and all that. And I don't know. I mean, as you see at the bottom ticker there, my handle is biblical anarchy. So I can't do it. Like
Yeah.
I try to sometimes put that hat on if I'm talking to statists, but I don't know. It's just not my jam.
Yeah, I think I have enough of a background in it of like just the way that I was raised to be able to kind of switch back into that mode. It's the same as like the other day the other part of your little ticker there, cuz I was talking with my wife's grandparents who are both very religious, and I just kind of like, even though I'm not a Christian anymore, I was able to just kind of like, for the sake of peace in the conversation, just like slip back into that mode for a little bit and operate as if I am, and like, because I still know all this stuff, I still understood everything they were saying, I could still have the conversation just fine. I didn't have to like poke and prod at their religion. That's not necessary. And so that's kind of how I feel about it with the status, is like, as much as I disagree with statism more than I disagree with Christianity, for sure, I still don't need to poke and prod at all of it. If the belief in America is what I can use to get them to become more libertarian, then sure, let's go down that path, and then eventually they'll realize they're wrong.
I hear what you're saying, and I can relate to it, except that I really was never, except for like maybe, I mean, when I was a kid, I guess, somewhat, when I just believed whatever my parents told me. But from the time I got politically active, which was like ninth grade when I joined my speech and debate team, I've always been more and more, well, until I became a libertarian, I was always like more and more left. And, I was kind of more like the Bernie Sanders type of Democrat leftist who hated America.
Mhm.
So even back then, it's like, now if I'm talking to like a lefty, I can actually sort of like go back in time and sort of like speak that language, so to speak. But yeah, you don't go to a Bernie Sanders style lefty and then wax poetically about the Constitution and Americana and all that. Like,
Yeah.
it's like that was the nice thing about becoming a libertarian and then an anarchist, was like, my anti-American sentiment didn't have to change. If anything, it just became more based.
Yeah. Yeah, I was definitely one of those, well, if you don't like it, go somewhere else kind of conservatarians at a younger age. I was never a Republican, but I was definitely a bled red, white, and blue, like Memorial Day was one of my favorite days of the year, kind of patriotic conservative. And like, I think Boy Scouts had a big part in that too. And like summer camp, we had to like raise the flag. Even at the Christian summer camp I went to was even more militaristic about like flag raising and like all of that kind of shit. So it was just ingrained into me.
Yeah. No, I was raised in that, so it's like I can kind of appreciate it, and I can, remember when I was like really young, like preteens and stuff, kind of believing in all that. But I don't know, it was very disillusioning for me when I started getting into politics and, started like just learning. And it honestly, like, I went so far left that it really challenged my faith for a while, because when I was able to see not only to the extent that America as a culture and the government was complicit in all of these wars that were basically sold to us on lies and were killing millions of people. But to the extent that Christian, evangelicalism and sort of like the Christian nation sentiment and all that, city on a hill sort of thought played into that as well. Like it just, it really makes me scratch my head when some of the people who are, I guess a little deranged about me go around calling me a Christian dominionist or a Christian nationalist, because it's like I've always been probably the most triggered by that crowd than I am almost any other crowd. I mean, even today, like I tend to be pretty animated against certain things on the left on certain social issues, but but the Christian nationalists who are also triggered on that will sometimes so you kind of that meme where it's like the people are like saying like you're all a bunch of filthy socialists, and the Republican goes, yeah, and then you're like, shut up, I'm talking about you. And so it's like I'll have that feeling when I'm like maybe like railing against like the left on thinking that they're pushing certain things on children too much, and then like Christian nationalists are like, yeah, and I'm like, no, shut up, you do the same thing but just from something that I might agree with more, but you're just as bad when it comes to like just wanting to indoctrinate and push people into ideologies and conform them to your worldview instead of like trying to raise them up as individuals. You know what I mean? So it's like, but that's always been my shtick, which is just that I think the excesses of the left are caused by the excesses of the right, which are caused by the excesses of the left, and it just, why fight our oppressors when we continue punching ourselves in the face? Because that's it works to the oppressors very well if we're fighting each other instead of looking down and seeing the chains around our ankles.
Right. Yeah, I've always been fascinated by this fight over, because it used to kind of feel like an actual fight over the youth and like the children, and like when I was maybe 15 to 18, I felt like there was actually a like a targeted war over us, like which side was going to win out that like age group. But now it's like an argument about like who's trying to do that more than the other one, and they're pointing fingers at like, oh, you're trying to indoctrinate children. And it's like, I like, especially as a kid, like the right was definitely winning that war early on.
Yeah.
And like they were winning the war for the last 50 years as
Right.
far as like
and now the
indoctrination of
tools
children.
they used were hijacked by people they don't like, and instead of thinking about like, how did we get here, it's just this reactionary, no, we have to just push back again and take control again, push our things on. It's just like I don't know, it boggles my mind. Like I don't even know, it's hard for me to even just chalk it all up to being raised in public schools or being like, it's like I can't, I don't know where it comes from. I mean, maybe to some extent it can be attributed to that, but I think there's got to be more contributing to that than just public schools indoctrinating people, because I mean, maybe it's some kind of tribalism thing or some sort of like I don't know, some sort of allergy to people who are different than you, which I don't know, I just don't get. To me, it's like I can be talking to Brianna Coyle, or I can be talking to like one of the post-libertarians who've gone like ultra, like, the dark side of Hoppieism. Like, and it's like, and like, you guys agree on one thing. You're like, we cannot live in a society with those people. And I'm like, yeah, one problem though, like, you can't avoid that unless you're going to use violence to eliminate all the people that you don't like. And neither side is willing to cave on that. It's like, I remember talking to Brianna Coyle like just a week ago and like bringing this up, and I was like, every time I've interacted with her, it's the same thing. It's like, you seem to have zero tolerance for conservatives. And now listen, you can maybe hate conservative ideology, And I think that's fine. You can hate an ideology. But when you start demonizing the people and saying we can't have any sort of coexistence with these people, do you not see it? Like, it's honestly, and I'm not trying to say Brianna's as bad as Joe Biden, because disagreements with Brianna aside, we agree on a lot more than we disagree on. But it's very similar to when Biden, with the whole dark MAGA speech and the talking about MAGA basically being like domestic terrorism. And it's just like, if you alienate, anywhere from a third to half of the population and call them, undesirables and people that need outcasts from society. And then you sit back and wonder, like, wow, why is our culture just so, like divisive, and why are people just fighting so much? It's just like, because like it's obvious. People have an allergy to people who live differently than them, which, I mean, I'm not saying I don't have any of that myself, but I don't know. I've always just kind of been used to, I think, like existing in spaces where I was the minority in terms of a position I held or maybe an identity I had. Being someone who was really Christian in high school in my area. I was in a minority then. I remember being when I was on the left, and I was a radical democratic socialist vegan, but I was still pro-life. And so that, I mean, like, ill to what? Like, there was a lot there you could have said ill to.
All of the above, but mostly the vegan part.
Oh yeah, no, don't worry. That's long behind me. But yeah, no. I guess the point of what I'm trying to say is just that I just feel like people take a path and just don't consider the consequences of their actions. It's just like, and when I say like coexist, it's like, it doesn't mean you even need to be best friends. You don't need to be next door neighbors even. Like, I'm okay with a sort of semi-Hoppian, like, people self-segregating into communities that share their values. Like, I kind of think in a free society that would be somewhat inevitable. But you know what? Like, I might live in a Christian conservative commune or community or whatever. I would still want to trade with and be peaceful with the, like, socialist, full, like, woke SJW, whatever you want to call it, community that might be like 5 miles down the road, because it might be like, hey, they have better coffee shops than we do, because conservatives suck at having hip things like coffee shops and
Right.
and stuff like that. So, you know what I mean? Like, I would still want to, I don't know. It's like, I don't take it as a personal attack against my identity that someone disagrees with me, but people on both sides, unfortunately, do that. And I don't know what the solution is.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't take it as a personal attack that someone disagrees with me. Like, that's something that a lot of people could learn from.
On anything, like, even like matters like, I mean, I think being a Christian in a growing secular society made me thick-skinned to, like, I mean, do you know how many comments you get from atheists that are just like, flying spaghetti monster, imaginary friend, yada, yada, yada. Like, I mean,
I've made some of those.
right. So it's like people, it's just like, when I'm a step removed from a fundamentalist in terms of how serious I take the Bible and my faith. And so it's like, I literally drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, of like, Jesus died on the cross, rose again, and I've accepted him as my savior. And I believe that he lives in my heart, that he died for my sins, that, like, I have a active relationship with him and the creator of the universe. And like, your two choices are basically, okay, I'm a Christian too, and I agree with what you believe, or I'm not a Christian, and I'm either A, some other religion, or B, I'm an atheist. And on some, if you don't believe what I believe, that at some level is, you have the thought that my understanding of the reality is either delusional or whether it's like, maybe not like I'm delusional, like I need locked up or anything, but I'm at least committing some sort of like self-deception or self-delusion or whatever. But
Mhm.
it's like, okay, I had the same thought about people who are atheists or people who are Muslims or whatever. But like we have to be able to separate people in terms of like valuing them as people and valuing their rights from disagreeing with their belief systems.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I mean, to me, that just seems like common sense. But I don't know if it's because of the media or if it's because of, identity politics and in the government between the two old parties, or a combination of all these different things. But that's just not what we have. People would much rather bicker about this stuff till the cows come home.
Yeah, I think part of the problem, is
You do that
with
every podcast, like every
Almost.
podcast I watch of yours.
Part of the issue, though, I think, is with this hyperpolarization and kind of rise in popularity of politics and political discourse, we have really a tough to notice but really deep problem of it's on our minds a lot more than it ever used to be. Like, you can't really exist or have a conversation with somebody without at least inquiring about their political opinion on something, whether it's like Roe v. Wade getting overturned, or the like COVID stuff, or like the student loan forgiveness. Like, there's just, you're constantly being bombarded in the news and social media about these things and asked your opinion on it, so you vocalize it. Where 50
Right.
years ago, you just went to work, you worked with the people next to you, you talked about sports or beers or boobs or whatever, and you went home, and that was just life. You didn't have to care, and we had a majority of the population that was staying out of it.
I'm going to go to work tomorrow and talk to my coworker about boobs.
Good. That's a good, healthy friendship.
Yeah, no, I think that's part of it. I don't know, like, some people have that, like that Michael Malice says, like, don't talk to your friends about politics. And I don't know, as I talk about on this show every time I'm on, I'm far too autistic to do that.
Right.
It's I traded hi, I'm Jacob and I'm a vegan for hi, I'm Jacob and have you heard of our Lord and Savior Murray Rothbard? So it's, I mean, a little less cringe, but it's the same energy. And I don't know,
maybe more cringe. I don't know. Rothbard's all right.
Yeah, it's we won't go into that, but at least I didn't say our Lord and Savior Michael Heiss. I mean, now that that would have been different. So the yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess to some extent there are some people who, for whatever reason, just don't care about politics or political philosophy or economics or whatever, and yeah, they talk about other stuff. And to some extent, I think, I don't know, like I think I do agree with the cultural critique that some Christians, or at least conservatives, broadly speaking, have about our culture, which is that, like, I actually talked about this on Reed's show on the episode he's, I think, yet to release because he doesn't know if he should or not. But I
want to hear that, whether he releases it or not. He told me about that. I don't
think we said anything that bad, but I don't know. So I tend to agree with the idea that, even like, let's say Christianity is false, like, just for sake of argument, for the point I'm trying to make, like, you could accept that as true, but still think that there's at least consequences to the growing state of our society in terms of becoming more secular, in that, like, we had for the longest time in our country, even if you were left or right or whatever, like, most people were part of the church, broadly speaking, and they had some kind of underlying group identity and community that they belong to. But that has kind of gone away. And even beyond that, when people have rejected Christianity and gone to more of a secular way of living, both individually and collectively, they don't have like, an ethic to rally behind, so to speak, like you did with Christianity. People end up, kind of having to make their own or agree to like a loose set of wishy-washy platitudes that are just kind of assertions. And like they can sound good on paper, but they kind of lack the will to power to like shape a group of people into like, people who kind of, even if they have disagreements, view themselves as being kind of part of the same team. And I think that's at least part of the cultural breakdown here. And like you could even say that's a cost we have to pay because Christianity isn't true and we need to move beyond it. Like whatever, like that. I don't think it's true, but you can hold that point of view and that's fine. But you can still recognize that even if that was possible, the transitionary period is going to be rough.
Yeah. I mean, shit, I can, as someone who doesn't believe in Christianity, agree that is a problem. Like I'm somebody that holds the exact belief that you're laying out hypothetically there. I think that there's a lot of things about religion that are extremely good for society, even if there are also a lot of bad things about religion that are really bad for society.
Yeah, but I tend to kind of agree with the Jordan Peterson point of view, what isn't unique to him, but I think he makes it the most eloquently, which is that like at the end of the day, like people are just religious, psychologically speaking. Like and you can even atheists end up, like they're going to have something that's psychologically operating as their religion. And the problem is like even if you could do better than Christianity, which I would not concede, but hypothetically speaking, if you could, it's like so far all of the replacement quote unquote religions that the secular world has offered as a replacement have kind of sucked. So, it's I'm
gonna have you and Jack Casey debate like Christianity versus mysticism sometime.
That'd be fun. I love Jack.
Great guy. That actually does sound like a really fun one. Very
chilled author though.
I definitely agree that the kind of replacement religions that atheists come by, like social media and social hierarchy, are significantly worse for society, for culture, for anything. I think that there's a couple of other religions out there that might be a little bit better for culture. Like I would argue like a more like Hindu or Buddhist based culture is probably going to end up a little bit I guess at least kinder and nicer and better to live in than what we've got here in the US, being based on Judeo-Christian kind of
I'm not as knowledgeable on Hinduism and Eastern religions, but I mean, isn't Hinduism like the primary or most popular religion like in India, or at least historically it was?
Yes. Didn't
they have like a really awful caste system that they're still kind of, at least to some degree, dealing with the consequences of?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. I just like, I mean, so, I mean, like, I guess the only point in my mind, like, it's just like,
every time that people have mixed their religion in with a governmental structure, it's turned out pretty shitty.
But was the caste system all from the state, or was that kind of culturally enforced and from the ground up almost? I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not an expert in India. Sure. I'd have to go and study that history. But, at the very least, the government was influenced by, you would think if there was something in the Hindu religion that pushed back against that strongly, that it would have at least heavily prevented that from happening. And you could say about the same with the examples of Christianity in different areas. I don't know. I guess my only point is maybe just the base skepticism that any religion prevents evil. Like that's kind of not the point of religion in my mind. I think any religion, I think, is going to suffer the same problem of like people can take those teachings and manipulate them or cherry pick them or twist them or whatever, and use it to post hoc ad hoc rationalize what they wanted to do anyway. So I think that's just a deeper problem that humanity has to face. I tend to think, like some people will throw out like Jainism or some other religions that like they're like, but there's no downsides to these. And I was like, okay, but like, how many Jainists are there? Like, and and it's like, no, I'm not trying to say it's a popularity contest, but that at least needs to be an element, right? Like, if your religion looks good on paper, like, oh, there's no problems here, but it's not compelling enough to actually like draw people into it, then that to me is at least somewhat of a flaw. Which by the way, you could make that criticism about libertarianism, and
I was about to say that.
I anticipated that, and that would be a fair criticism. That there's a if not a lot of people are drawn into your religion or ideology, doesn't mean that you're all wrong, but it might mean there's something there you need to at least analyze and deal with.
50 years in, you can't continue to blame everyone else. That like, oh, they're just not smart enough or cool enough or just don't want freedom enough.
Yeah, no, and I was listening to Reed on your show last week, and he's kind of like, and also when he had Pete Quinones on his show, and he's kind of, I think he's drank the entire Kool-Aid bottle now in terms of like, not everyone's a libertarian, not everyone's going to be a libertarian, and we're a minority, and I wouldn't say I even reject that. I just don't know. I don't know. I guess it's kind of like the devil is in the details. It's like, because I think some people make that claim and they're like, and we're fixed at 1% like we are now, and we're always going to be that way. And I think my sense is that, well, we're never going to be 50%, but we can definitely be more than 1%.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we going to max out? Like, I don't know. Like, it could be 10%, could be 20%. 30% seems like maybe the high end. Like, I would say that would be the optimistic part of me would say that's maybe achievable. I think to some extent the numbers, the high end of what the numbers could be depends on how narrowly or widely we try to define libertarianism, which is why I've always kind of pushed the thin libertarian mindset, because it's like, if we're going to be really thick libertarians and you have to check off all these boxes to be a true libertarian, then you'll be the purest libertarian on an island of one, but you won't be doing anything to make society closer to your values. Which again goes back to my criticisms of the right and the left libertarians that can't stand each other. But if I was able to like take away that baggage and just say, hey, these 5 issues right here, like war, criminal justice reform, drug criminalization, the Federal Reserve and monetary policy, and at least somewhat more of a decentralized model of governance, whether you want full-blown market anarchy or you want some sort of really strong federalism, there can be a little bit of disagreement, but I think we all have to at least agree to some sort of decentralized model. But like, I guarantee you that Breonna Coyle and Jeremy Kauffman agree on those 5 issues.
Can confirm. I've talked to both of them about all 5 of those issues.
Right. So it's like, and by the way, I'm not like picking on Breonna Coyle. She's just like, I just talked to her last week. So like, she is the left libertarian most recent in my mind, who I have respect for, unlike other people who were calling me a Nazi. She was kind of too, but I don't know. Leave that for another day.
She does that. It's okay. You get used to it.
She doesn't like come out and directly say it. She kind of comes out and says, well, I don't care that people call you a Nazi. Like, why shouldn't we? And I was like, because holding up a Nazi next to me, well, first of all, the Nazi would round me up and throw me in a concentration camp because I have Jewish grandparents and Jewish parents. So it wouldn't end too well for me. But anyway, my point is just like, if we stripped away the cultural baggage and we just made libertarianism about those 5 issues, at least leading with those 5 issues and saying those 5 issues are the most important, and everything else you can have different opinions on and promote your particular flavor at your local level, but don't try to promote that particular view at a national level. If we did that, yeah, I think that 20 to 30% is a reachable number. But if we go hard right or hard left, we're,
Yeah.
not only
Unfortunately,
we're going to be low, not only because we're thickening the philosophy, we're going to be low because people are going to be completely turned off by the incessant infighting.
yeah. And unfortunately, I don't think Brianna Coyle or Jeremy Kaufman would agree to narrowing it down to those 5 topics.
I might be biased. I think Jeremy Kaufman would be more willing to than Brianna Coyle, but
I think if you leave off COVID, he would disagree, and if you don't leave off COVID, you're still splitting the party.
I mean, I guess so. COVID's
He has a
interesting one.
smaller number of like prioritized what's the word I'm looking for? Controversial ones than like Brianna does, but I mean, I think most people still have at least one issue in their top 5 that the whole party doesn't agree on. And
But like, does anyone does even Brianna Coyle would Brianna Coyle say that it was good or libertarian to have mask mandates or proposed vaccine passports or lockdowns? Like, I mean, I don't know Brianna that well. It just seems to me that I felt like most libertarians agreed on like at least that foundation. What maybe people disagreed on was how strongly do we message against it? Because some people said, oh yeah, it's not libertarian, but we shouldn't focus on that right now, versus some people saying, no, this is like the most important thing right now that we need to talk about. And I don't know. I guess, and I'm not saying that isn't potentially an issue that would divide people as well, but I don't know. Sometimes I think that issue got muddied up by the other issues that were already pushing people against each other. Like, I feel like if you didn't have the cultural baggage, people would have been more willing to have a semi-united front on COVID. But the underlying division, it was like, oh, that side's going hard against COVID, so we can't do that. Like, that's kind of my sense of how that happened, but I could be wrong. That's just what I think.
Yeah, you're probably partially right. I also think that to use an argument that quote unquote your side would really love, there's a lot of, for lack of a better term, blue-pilled presence on that side, and I do not believe that those two things actually have to go together. I know plenty of quote unquote woke like based people. We're both good friends with Ben Heckman. I consider myself fairly like SJW friendly.
Wokish.
So yeah, I don't think you have to be blue pilled to be woke or woke to be blue pilled, but there are plenty of people, especially within the old guard of the party, that not only believed the entire narrative on COVID, but also believe most of the narrative on 9/11 and the war in the Middle East and a whole bunch of other things, that they just somehow have been present in this movement for a decade plus and not questioned the thing that we're fighting to a severe enough level to actually see that COVID might be something that's being lied about or misused. They were just worried because they were told to be worried. And any kind of pushback seemed like just a horrible idea. And I get that. Like, if you really believed everything that the news was saying about COVID, like every single thing from day one, any kind of pushback against like wearing a mask makes you sound like a horrible person. And they don't want the Libertarian Party to be associated with being horrible people. We already are enough, especially on issues like this, where people think that like if we lived in a libertarian society, an issue like COVID would kill all of us because we wouldn't be able to have mask mandates or vaccine mandates or passports or anything like that to keep us safe. I think a lot of people see COVID as an issue where we fucked up by fighting it, by like kind of proving the major criticism against us, that like if push came to shove, we would still be individualists even to our to like if it kills us. So I understand their mindset. Again, if you believed everything that you were told, which is a little problematic.
Which that definitely is a problem, and I think, I mean, and I think it's hard for us to go back and remember the early days of COVID with a clear memory because it became so partisan and sensationalized. I was very cautious early on. I think from March until probably July, I was kind of like, I wasn't just falling for anything anyone said hook, line, and sinker, but I was like, I'm gonna wait and see for a little while till I can kind of get the facts and know exactly how bad this is. Because my sense was, if COVID was as bad as people were making it out to be, then it would be kind of like, it could be potentially justified for some state action to take measures that you would ideally want the market to do, but like we don't have anarcho-capitalism right now. And to quote Peter Quinones, don't live in Capistan in your heads, right? So in the same way that I'm not going to stubbornly refuse to call 911 if my house is on fire, I'm not going to stubbornly refuse or like push back against like state action that is justified. And I think most people would even say like, yeah, like, a few weeks, maybe a month of lockdowns and then like cautious reopenings that's not the issue. The issue is what was everything that came after that. And I think, I don't know, like, I don't think you have to be ideologically possessed either way. You don't need to automatically disbelieve anything the government says, but you don't need to automatically believe it either. You should have again, weird to have the near fundamentalist Christian be saying this, but maybe a healthy level of skepticism. You know what I mean? To not be convinced or unconvinced off the bat, and to instead maintain a stance of kind of neutral agnosticism until enough facts are present to convince you of the truth that the facts are leading you to, rather than a preconceived notion. And there's definitely people that went too far the other way, that was like, oh, the whole thing is a hoax and it doesn't exist, and the vaccine is going to fill your body with microchips that are going to sync you up to and it's like, that's all nonsense, like complete nonsense. But then there's people that act like if you aren't quadruple teen boosted and triple
You're
mask,
killing grandma.
Also ridiculous. So yeah, that's one of those things where I don't know. I will say the blue pilled, red pilled divide is definitely a legitimate concern, and that's why I have so much in common. And I think a lot of camaraderie with people like you, where we can have a lot of disagreements on maybe social issues or on particular strategies within politics, etc. Right? But we both, at least, I think, where we agree on, I think, is in terms of that divide, in terms of like, we don't view the regime, we don't view the powers that be as establishments worthy of our respect, or establishments worthy of effort to gain the respect of. If that was even possible, which to me, it's like, it's not possible. Now, I'll also agree with, you could probably say, no, we're not going to gain their respect. Maybe let's not give them easy ammunition against us. And I would agree with that as well. We should, maybe refrain from certain comments of a certain nature being pushed out from certain state affiliate accounts.
Happy holidays.
Actually, I will defend that one to an extent. The other one, no, that was.
Which other one are we talking about?
The one about the minimum wage.
Oh,
the was $6 million minimum wage, or you're anti-Semitic. Now listen, the inner shit poster in me.
That one.
You missed that one? Okay. Yeah. Now listen, that's funny as shit. Okay, but that's funny as shit. But probably not a good idea to put that out from a state affiliate account. Like
Yeah.
I thought that was a bad call.
Yeah.
That should go out, on a personal account or something like that. So, because again, that's giving people easy ammunition, and like I can die on the hill of the McCain tweet because it's just like, okay, but like John McCain is that freaking bad.
Yeah.
It's not like they made this kind of crass comment about a low level sort of like, mundane politician. Like they went after one of the like architects of the Iraq war and the war on terror. So like it's deserved as far as I'm concerned, even if it is a little bit in poor taste. It's kind of like, I view that certain state affiliate as like they're the ones who kind of push the Overton window in that direction, but they should, do it responsibly. And so, yeah, I think just to get back to my point though, we can have disagreements, on all these issues, but like, yeah, I think the common thread going through all of that is just like not being cucked for our oppressors and the agencies that provide cover for our oppressors. Like, like the coastal elites and the DC elites, like they're not going to like us. We're not going to gain their favor. We're not going to make libertarianism cool in these legacy or mainstream medias. And
Never.
the idea of even getting a libertarian pushing libertarian ideas in Washington D.C. Is a pipe dream as far as I'm concerned. No matter who's running the party. So, and yeah, to that extent, I think the old guard was operating way too much under that everyone's a libertarian and doesn't know it mentality to some extent, which is just, wrong.
I think that it's somewhere in between, like
Yes.
that kind of Gary Johnson-esque approach, and then like what Reed was saying on the show last week. I kind of disagreed with his take a little bit there. I think it's somewhere in between. There are a lot of people who are libertarians and don't know it yet, and I do think it makes up a fairly solid chunk of the country. There's just an also solid chunk of the country that are deeply statist. And
Well, and my pushback against Reed is that not so much that I agree that not that, again, I think max we could be 10 to 20%, maybe 30. But I don't agree with his assessment, if I remember it correctly, that most people either want to be ruled or want to rule others.
Mhm.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I actually think the problem is 50 plus, like 50 to 60% of the population is somewhat apathetic.
Mhm.
Like they just want to live their lives. And now you can maybe like twist that to be like, oh, they just want to be left alone. They're libertarians. It's like, no, they just want to be left alone. Like in the sense of like, they just don't live their lives concerned about anything politics unless shit hits the fan to a degree that forces them to. But then when it does, it's like, they're not operating on a libertarian mindset. They're operating on it's not about freedom. It's about security for these people. But those people, there's a mixture of people in that crowd who are be left, right, or center, or nothing. But I don't think they fit into any category of terms of like wanting to rule others or wanting to be ruled or wanting libertarianism. Like they're just like they're the apolitical. They're the part of the population that just doesn't show up to the polls every year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Shit, my wife is in that camp.
Yeah, I mean, my wife was kind of in that camp too until I radicalized her.
Working on it.
Yeah. I can give you some pointers.
Yeah, and I honestly I have a couple of friends in that kind of camp, and those are the people that I usually go to for like a echo chamber check. Which actually, the McCain tweet, I actually did a very solid echo chamber check and asked around for people's opinions on that from like various ideological standpoints, because I was genuinely curious how other people viewed that. So like, I talked to my wife about it. I talked to my sister about it, who I think is watching this right now, because she's saying her husband is also that apolitical kind of person. But like, I talked to a bunch of people outside of the movement to kind of, people that I know that are a little bit more edgy that might have liked that, and then some people to kind of check the other narrative that like, oh, anyone that even has the tiniest stick up their ass is going to completely never think of libertarianism ever again. So I kind of double checked that, and that argument seemed to be pretty inaccurate as well.
Yeah.
But it was, most of what I got was a resounding, I get it, but it was too far.
Oh yeah, and I think it was a bit too far, and I wouldn't have made that tweet. But that's kind of like, that's New Hampshire's brand. Like, they're going to take things too far. But there's like, I don't know, New Hampshire has a second line. It's like they crossed the line, and I've learned to accept that. I just draw a second line. I'm like, okay, fine, we're going to compromise. You guys are going to cross this line. Don't cross this line.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And they crossed that other line with some of the other tweets, and that was definitely a problem. But heck, my dad voted for McCain in 08, and I showed him that tweet, and he was just like, based.
Both of my parents voted for McCain. I remember that shit. That was the first election I actually paid attention to.
And people know now, like, even like a lot of right wingers don't necessarily like McCain anymore, because like they know what a warmonger he was. They know that the Iraq war, like, even if they're not like ideologically anti-war, they're at least anti the war in the Middle East at this point, because like the lies of that have just been completely exposed.
Yeah.
So and so people, I don't think McCain is as revered as what people think. Yeah, like using the picture of a daughter crying over her father, like that can tug on our heartstrings, and I think it's like, okay, but like how many, and I was like, me and a bunch of people were responding in the Twitter threads with like pictures of children in Iraq and in Yemen crying over the bodies of their parents after bombs had been dropped. Like I'm sorry, like, you want to pull on my heartstrings? Okay, but if you're going to ask me to have sympathy for a daughter grieving her father, you need to consistently apply that. To have sympathy and outrage against those who would undermine the emotional experience, the emotional grief of children grieving over their parents. And maybe you should then apply that to go, to what extent is our government and people like John McCain, and this includes Meghan McCain, who, isn't just some like innocent bystander who, doesn't engage in the world of politics and doesn't defend her father's legacy and defend his political ideology. You know what I mean? Like,
She's
to what
almost
extent,
worse.
yeah, in some ways worse, and like, has advocated for this mass murder machine that is our, U.S. military. Like, I'm sorry, like, asking me to be empathetic to children grieving over their dead parents, it just makes me more favorable of that tweet than like, my initial reaction was like, ooh, and then like the more people got like, just like, clutching their pearls over it, and just, I was just like, yeah, no, you don't, like, you can say it's in a little bit in poor taste, but you don't get to defend Meghan and John McCain just because someone very crassly called them out. Like, it's, to some extent, like, like, was it a Christian thing to do? No, and I wouldn't do that as a Christian, but I understand where that comes from. Just like, hey, I don't condone terrorists trying to kill American civilians on American soil. However, when you read the writings of bin Laden and why he orchestrated the 9/11 terror attacks in response to America killing, hundreds and thousands, and contributing to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Arabs in the Middle East on their soil for decades, it's like, you know what? I don't condone the violence on that side with the violence on that side, but again, just the basic Ron Paul point about blowback, to not acknowledge that is to bury your head in the sand.
Yeah. So I wasn't gonna bring this up when you mentioned Malice earlier, but were you part of the conversation on Twitter today? Because he was going after LP New Hampshire and defending McCain.
I did not see this.
Based on she's my friend and you should be nice to her. And so there was a big kind of hypocrisy callback based off what you mentioned earlier, the whole like don't talk about politics with your friends, because he was all like, oh, she's my friend and we talk politics, and like where I'm getting there was kind of his defense was like, let's not push people away that we might be able to win over. And then it's like, oh, but I thought you don't talk about politics with your friends.
What's that? Michael Heiss is calling me. Oh, I gotta go. I can't answer this question. I'm so...
I don't really have an opinion on it. I just wasn't sure if you were
was not aware of it. I mean, I love Michael Malice. I love Dave Smith. I tend to be, I'm not firmly on any side on this, but I'm probably a bit closer to taking a Reed in New Hampshire's side than I am Malice and Dave on this particular point. And I think, and I say this with love for both of those men, because they've been heavily influential on me and my early journey into libertarianism. And I'm friends with Dave and had him on my show, and hung out with him in PA, and 2 years in a row. And I think he's one of the greatest voices and activists in our party and in our movement. But yeah, I think on this particular thing that he is more concerned about the optics. And I think it's just, again, it's going to sound harsh, but it's just my opinion. I don't mean it with malice, but pun, but I don't mean it with malice, but like, I think those don't throw stones from glass houses kind of has to come into the conversation here. Like, Dave and Malice are not just promoters of, they're sort of like the progenitors of the shitposting culture in the liberty movement, or at least like, the modern shitposting part of the liberty movement. And especially in my particular sphere of the Mises caucus controlled elements of the party and the movement. So it's like, nothing's changed except that now we've taken over the national party, and now we have more eyeballs on us. And the people who are calling us out aren't Fakertarians, they're Timcast and major media outlets. And I gotta, you know what? I 100% agree with what Clint Russell said on his show when he talked about this, which is like, you guys are getting squeamish now, then you're not ready. You know what I mean? Like, you want to take an actual fight to the state and really challenge the omnipotent cult of the state. And again, I'm really just repeating their talking points back to them. Like, this is what they've been telling us for years. This is what they were criticizing the old guard about, being like, don't stop being so squeamish about getting backlash for the mainstream media. Because if you think this is bad, it's going to get so much fucking worse if we actually start being more successful. So, listen, if you want to take the point of view that it wasn't your favorite tweet, it wasn't your preferred strategy, you wish they wouldn't have made it, that's fine. But to this far after the fact, if Malice is still going on about it, still making a big deal about it, I don't know. Like, I just think that's,
I think he was brought into the conversation saying, because like somebody said like, this is what I think the original tweet was, somebody like quote tweeted it multiple days after and tagged him and was like, this is what Michael Malice promised us would happen if he took over the LP Twitter, which, was the conversation that like Dave brought up. It was like, if he runs for president, that Malice would be his comms director, press secretary, right? And like, so somebody made a comment based off of that, and like, look at like it's kind of like a it's happening kind of tweet, and Malice is just like, no. Just NO period, like that's it. And then it like became a whole conversation, and a couple of like people got involved that probably shouldn't have, and now then it
And
was like a whole conversation.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, I mean, again, it's not a big deal to me. Like, if that's their opinion, that's fine.
Mhm.
I would just ask that, like, let's move on. Like, we're not always going to agree on things. And, but yeah, just my general concern is just like, you know, it to me, it falls just a bit on deaf ears to now complain about shit posting after the takeover, considering the lead up to the takeover and the insane amounts of shit posting that went completely uncriticized. I don't know. Like it to some extent, it's just like if you're gonna change course, okay, but you better have answers for why you're changing course and realize that people are going to call you out on that and be like, hey, you're changing course. You're kind of to some extent betraying something you defended in the past. Now, I don't want to say that Dave and Malice can't evolve in their ideas and maybe, say that they defended or overlooked certain things in the past that now they find more problematic for maybe reasons that they've come to over time. That's fine, but like you can't just if people call you out for that, you need to respond with answers along those lines and not just I'm not saying they are dismissing people. I just hope that that isn't what happens. I hope if they get challenged that they can give explanations for why they've changed, or if they don't think they've changed, then to explain why, to a lot of people it looks inconsistent, and I think that's a fair criticism. So if they have good answers for it, they need to at least provide good answers for it, whatever direction they want to take it.
Yeah, I do find it a little bit funny because like LPNH for a while after the shit that went down up there, we're kind of like championing on the fact that like if Amash, Spike, and Dave all agree, then we win. And Dave, Spike, and Amash are all agreeing that they did an oopsie here, and now they're like, oh, you guys, never mind. But yeah, I don't personally have too strong of an opinion either way. But it's I do think that there is a certain level of alienating possible allies that we should try to stay away from. I don't necessarily know if I agree that Meghan McCain was a possible ally.
Yeah, no, if that was his point, I think that's just absurd.
Yeah.
Like, that just would have to very strongly disagree with that. I don't, I don't, I almost like I believe you that that's what he's saying because I trust you, but I'm like my intuition's almost be like, no, he didn't say that. Like, or if he said it, it had to have been a troll or a joke. Like, really? Like, so I don't know.
Well, we got quite far off topic and talked very little about your actual election as a constable, but it was still a great conversation as always. I know you've got a...
It wasn't much to talk about along those lines because I don't do anything with it. and I got elected off the Moulton maneuver here in Pennsylvania, which is basically like running uncontested. So it was I ran against somebody who had some write-in votes. That was it. So
nice.
I had like 40 people vote for me.
Nice. That's a solid.
But
number.
it's a low-hanging fruit, and hey, take it. You know what I mean? Like take what it's kind of like in football, like take whatever the defense gives you. Like if they're going to give you 4 yards up the middle, take 4 yards up the middle. You know what I mean? If it's easy enough to do so.
Yeah. Well, I know you got to get running, but tell everybody where that they can find your show and you and follow and listen, and also how they can find LPPA and get involved and help out maybe some of the other campaigns going on.
Yeah, and we have a lot of people running here in PA this year on the statewide elections. I think it's the most since like 1998 or something like that.
Wow.
Like we had 23. We lost a few of them on challenges, but I think we're still like at like 19 or 20 or something like that. So that's like obviously governor, lieutenant governor, senator, and then a lot of state house reps and a couple people running for Congress as well. So, if you want to check out, go to lppa.org and follow the LPPA on Twitter, which should just be, at LPPA. And we are sharing our candidates' posts and stuff all the time. I'll do a personal shout out to our lieutenant governor candidate, who's my great friend, Tim McMaster, here in York County, Pennsylvania. And hold on, I'm going to look up his Twitter handle because I don't know it off the top of my head. It's at Tim4PA. If you are watching this and you want to help out a great libertarian candidate, go to at Tim4PA on Twitter, or I think timforpa.com, and you can support his campaign if you would, please. Otherwise, if you're in Pennsylvania and we're looking to the party, go to lppa.org and you can get plugged in there. And then as far as me and what I'm doing, at Biblical Anarchy on Twitter, Daniel318.com is the website. I'm on Facebook, and I'm on podcatchers and stuff. So, you can look me up on YouTube or any of the podcatchers. There is a change coming up that I can't announce yet to the podcast. So just stay tuned for that and you'll get all the updates for that once that change is done. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks, Dave, for having me back on. We'll have to do it, not wait so long between appearances, because I love chatting with you, man. It's you're to quote more Bible here, because that's what I do, iron sharpening iron. And I like talking to people who agree with me, but I also like talking to people who have enough of a disagreement or different point of view that we can, hopefully sharpen each other and make each other better in our, different pursuits of the same goals.
Yeah, podcasts with people too similar are really boring. I've done a couple of those where I've just been like, yeah, you're right. And then they're like, yeah, you're right. And then I'm like, yeah, I know, we're right. And then it's just like the entire
autism intensifies.
But excited to hear what changes are coming to the podcast. And definitely, yeah, thanks for coming on. This is, as always, was a great combo.
Cool, man. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Definitely go follow Jacob on Twitter, friend him on Facebook. Lots of great content. Watch his show. He does great interviews and great conversations. And then check us out back here next Tuesday, I think, is the next show. That's haven't officially confirmed the schedule, but we will be back. Until the next time, keep up the fight.
Shut up and sit down. Shut up and sit down. Shut up and